didn't miss initiation. Also, I protected some of the younger fellows from being too much initiated, if that's the expression. And all in all, it was a good freshman year for me. But now, as I say, came the end of the semester, hard work, final examinations, and then I had to start looking for a job. Well, first of all, of course, I went right back to the Embarcadero and see what ships were in. None was there, so I went to a employment agency and paid a few dollars. And I was fortunate to get a job in the bakery on the Madison Dock in San Francisco. So I worked as a baker there for about a week when the steamship Mariposa, beautiful passenger liner, first class, came in, and the chief baker came down, stuck his head into the bake shop. He knew everybody there, and asked if anybody is interested to go aboard ship for a trip. And they looked at me and said, "Are you interested?" Of course, I said, "I'm interested." And so they said, "Fine, go," and they are signing on right now. I went right up to where the union was signing on, and they asked me, "You ever belong to a union?" I told them I belonged to Local 24, the confectioners union. They said, "Fine." They signed me on temporary, and I had a job on a ship. And of course the pay was much, much better than I was getting ashore, and anything I earned aboard ship I actually could save. In addition to that, since I had been working only 1 week out of that employment agency job, the fellows in the shop persuaded me to go back to the employment agent, whom nobody liked, and try to get some money back. After all, it cost me probably $5 or $6 to get a job. So I went back there and told them that I was laid off, they don't need another man. And so he made a phone call. Yes, that's correct. So he paid me $3, so I got $3 out of him. The only time I ever got any good out of him. Of course, he got me some jobs, but he had to pay pretty heavy for these jobs. Anyway, now I got ready to go aboard ship. There was another, I think he was a Czechoslovakian, who was the chief night baker. I was the assistant night baker, which meant I worked nights, had all day off. That was ideal because now I could go sightseeing. And so we started out, and of course I got a little seasick the first night, but I managed to hold my own. I learned a lot of bread baking aboard that ship. First stop was Hawaii, and the first class passengers were greeted with a big band and lace and hula skirts and stuff like that. As far as I'm concerned, it was all very new. I walked through Honolulu, then I got on the streetcar and went out to Waikiki and tried the beach and swimming. It was wonderful. And in other days I was there, I would go down to the, I believe they call it the Bishop Museum. Anyway, I really did some sightseeing. It was interesting. Next stop was Samoa. And there we just had about 4 or 5 hours stopover. But that was enough for me, because I had all day off, so as soon as the crew was allowed to go ashore, I was the first one in the boat, went over there and started sightseeing. At that time in Samoa, they had still quite a lot of jungle. I don't know how it is today, but it was just a few typical shacks along the beach, a general store. The natives came down sitting on the sidewalk or along the road selling beads and tablecloth and baskets. And as I kept on walking, one fellow there, half native, asked me if he can show me something. He wants to be my guide. I said, sure, how much? He said, oh, that's all right. We settled that afterwards. So he started walking with me into the jungle, and that's naturally a fairly good path. And we met some other Hawaiians, natives, who came down to the beach carrying their baskets, and I took some pictures and gave them a dime each for taking their pictures. Then the fellow took me into his home, which was a typical Hawaiian hut on stilts to keep the vermin out. And we went in, and he showed me how the Hawaiians live. I think he was living by himself, although it was a pretty nice cabin. And he gave me some poi, and he had some other fruits, typical Samoan fruits. Anyway, he really showed me a little bit, and then he took me back in time so I could get aboard ship, and I paid him tobacco and stuff like that. So he got something out of me, and I had a nice sightseeing tour in Pengo Pengo. That's the name of the place. It's a beautiful harbor, that Pengo Pengo. Completely locked with a rather small entrance to it, high, steep mountains on both sides. Beautiful place. I was very impressed. And the water clear. We could jump down and dive as deep as we can. You could still see clear water. Anyway, beautiful Pengo Pengo. Then from there we left and we passed what they then called Tin Can Island. And a German was living on the Tin Can Island, and he came out to yell in German to the chief baker, whom he knew personally. And there we would all have a few letters ready to mail. They would go down the boat, picked up the mail. They actually was put into a milk can, tin can, and dumped overboard, and he would pick it up and take it onto his Tin Can Island. I think the real name is something like Niafao. And on the way back, then we would pick up the same mail with a stamp of Niafao, and it would then be delivered wherever we send it to. Made an interesting stamp for a stamp collector. So I saw that, and of course, since I worked at night, I had to get up to see these special events because I had to do a little saving. Next stop was Fiji Islands. Fiji Islands in those days was still pretty wild, and they still had cannibals there, although we didn't get close to them as far as I know. But there, the thing to do is get a bicycle, rent a bicycle, and go wherever there's a path or a road, and go as far as you can and see what's to be seen. 2 or 3 other fellows with me on bicycles. We went into one of the native villages, and before long some native girls there started grinning and laughing and grinning at us, and before long we had them behind what happened to be the mission, and grinning and laughing and fooling around some more. And I guess we gave them a little money, and it wasn't very much. Took some pictures which were really shocking to the students after I brought them back. But we had a good time. When all of a sudden there appears native. And he yelled something, and he had a big machete there, and he started, I don't know whether it was a put-up job or what, but anyway, we started running, got on our bicycles and beat it like as fast as we could. Then we went back to Suva and did some sightseeing around there, saw the beautiful tropical gardens of the few British residents who were there. The military, naturally all native in fancy uniform, was up there for parade. In those days, these islands, they were still quite primitive and really interesting to see. They were not overrun by tourists yet. The tourists would go ashore, probably go into a big bus and be taken from one place to the other. But the seamen, of course, they either went to a bar and saw some girls, or else, like myself, they went actually sightseeing to see what's going on. I was for sightseeing anytime. We left Suva that evening, and that's the first time when I had seen them before, but there I really saw a bunch of sharks. They would follow the ship through the harbor because that's where they got most of their food. The ships would throw over their offal, and the sharks would have a real feast. From Suva we went down to New Zealand and stopped in Auckland. Auckland impressed me immediately as a typical small British city. Everything seemed to be British. Small style, the buildings, the people, everything, even their dialects was British. I walked all over the place, ended up in the library, and there was naturally a statue of Queen Victoria. So went all over the place, mostly on foot, usually sometimes on bicycle whenever I could get one. We again stayed there, I believe, overnight. Nothing of great importance. I got acquainted with some people there who always like to talk about their trips to the United States and talk about it, and I listened to them. I met some interesting characters there. One fellow told me about mining in Fiji, told me about the cannibals there. And in fact, I even got some pictures which he supposedly took of cannibals. And it really made an impression on me, but of course I was there for a few hours and saw a lot, learned a lot, back aboard ship. By that time usually it was evening and I had to get busy starting to make bread and pies, and baked apples was one of the specialties. So we went back and the next trip was across the Tasman Sea to Sydney. And there we were really hit by a heavy storm. The ship was really keeling back and forth, almost keeling over, they said. I was asleep, only then it was so bad that I heard a big crash where hundreds of dishes in the kitchen smashed, and there was considerable damage to the ship. But anyway, all I could think of is get dressed and go up and see what the storm looks like. It was quite impressive, a real big one. But then we got into Sydney and we saw pictures of our ship coming in, and we saw pictures of the storm, storm results or effects on the beach, and we heard of all the other ships who were in trouble. Some of them didn't make it at all. Anyway, that was the big storm. We got into Sydney. Sydney is an interesting city, but one of the first things I had to do in Sydney was to buy some sort of a suitcase. And naturally, I was trying to get it as inexpensive as possible, so I went into a second-rate store. And there was a very nice elderly hook-nosed gentleman who showed me suitcases. I told him I wanted a leather suitcase. He brought down a suitcase which here in the States was known as fiber. It was a plastic material, and I wasn't interested. So when he showed it to me and said, beautiful suitcase, and of course he had a British accent, I said, well, that's fiber. He thought I said paper. And he said, piper, get out. I don't sell piper suitcases, get out. So anyway, that was the effect of the accent, German and American, as compared to Australian. His piper suitcases didn't exist. He and I, of course, intended to say fiber, not piper. Anyway, Sydney, there I went out to the zoo to look at the koala bears. And the